I think we're here. Okay, it is Friday, May 16th, 2025. It's good morning for me, but it is not for you, Dr. Eleanor.
Nope. Early afternoon for me.
So we go ahead and get a little chat already, so I won't do the usual sounds like I'm not prepared, which is generally what it is, where I just act like we just started chatting. So we've been chatting already, and now I'm rambling. Here's my first question for you, or question slash. So the four worlds, often in class, you will it's not these words. You don't want to do readings anymore, but it's, that's not your focus. You want to focus on the four worlds. And so the four worlds as a concept, the four worlds as energy maps. How would you describe the four worlds as an elevator pitch? Like really short and sweet.
Most people live in a fractionated state. They find that they're on overload or not getting what they want in their life, and the balance of it is out of whack. And that's because there are four worlds. The mental waking world, which is the world we live in, the world of our culture, the world we're socialized into. And most people are pretty comfortable with that world from the standpoint of how they design their life. But that doesn't take them inside to the core of their being, where they're sensitive, they know who they are. And I always say, when you know what you know, because you know it, and nobody can tell you you don't know it, you're not stubborn, you're not selfish, do not compromise. It's your core spiritual alignment. And that's important. And that world has a different way of handling stress and emotions than the mental waking emotional world. The emotional reactivity of the mental world is just that. In spirit, we're not reactive. We're balanced and we think differently. So we can take whatever's happening around us and we can bring it to a higher level of understanding, of integration within ourselves. And from that place, we can be creative and feel joy. So the real key, and this is what the Tree of Life teaches as well as a roadmap to self-actualization, that the key to living an integrated, balanced life is having emotional reactivity taken out of your day-to-day world. And so to teach people to balance in their life and to take time for spirit, to take time to know who they are and what really brings them joy. So it's my belief that everyone can do work they love and love work they do and live a life they love and love the life they're living. Otherwise, it's not happy. And we're here to be happy and fulfilled. In Noble Energy Maps, 99% of the population at 3 months of age are designed to manifest their full potential. I've seen some people who are not manifesting generators in their integrated design. And many of them have a lot of potential. I did a reading this morning of someone who's a split definition manifesting generator. And I was talking to the parents and giving them very specific advice about how to talk to the child, how to handle the child. And at one point I said, the child is an indigo, which means the child is very conscious. And I said, and the child happens to have the 2145, which is a channel of breathing, and will be stressed if things are not aligned, because the child was also very open splenically. And looking at noble energy maps as a roadmap of consciousness, which it is in the four worlds, because it's an integration of the tree of life, when you know how to read the tree of life, um, was so revealing to how this child can be taught to integrate the worlds. But we don't live currently in a society that integrates the spiritual world into child rearing or into successful adult's life.
Okay, that was beautiful.
Thank you.
An elevator pitch is what happens when we talk between one floor and the other in the elevator. So
That was long.
no, it was beautiful. I'm just teasing. But I wonder, because we were talking about like I want to go out and do work as an energy strategist, and I want to be able to describe the four worlds. And I'm not going to have, well, A, the ability to say it like you just said it, or B, always that much of an opportunity to say that much. So how would you describe the four worlds if you had in 3 or 4 sentences?
Most people don't live a balanced life, and it causes them pain.
Mhm.
So the four worlds is a way to make sure you balance your life and are fulfilled in all dimensions of functioning day to day.
Beautiful. And it was funny, even when you gave the more eloquent reading or version, you said most people were fractionated, right? And so, like, if you view as like a whole or a circle, divide into 4 quadrants. Yeah, I mean, it just appeals to every part of what's going on for me, whether it's the geometry of it or the it all correlates. So, okay. It's probably enough on that. I want to pick up from class this week, because we've been talking about the software, and the personality and design column labels and how those should be removed, right? Because and I would love to talk through the process of like how you'll replace those labels, because we are talking about a diagram, right? So
Do
much
I
like,
still have those labels on my charts?
yeah, that's what Naomi was asking about. And so, because you said, well, you don't subscribe to the personality design labels, right? The conscious or unconscious.
Well, it's pretty easy. It could be labeled birth date, 3 months before birth, 3 months after birth. I realized this week, which I'd never described before, that when I was doing the calculations to get the accurate charts, the reason I did the postnatal is that as an astrologer, we always, astrologers use what they call a day for a year. So in the ephemeris, which is all of the planetary positions given for every day of a year. If the baby was born, let's say on May 1st, we would look at all of the positions of the moon going back 3 months and going forward 3 months. Why 3 months? Because when astrology was developed and brought to consciousness, people lived about 90 years, up, max. And so an astrologer would want to see what would happen at different ages. And so they recognized that the moon was the timer of events in the person's life.
Mhm.
And so they would go back 90 days and forward 90 days. So when I was studying astrology, and when I studied astrology, I actually learned how to do the charts by hand. And I had all of the books of tables of latitudes and longitudes, and there are algorithms you have to use. It's a very complicated calculation process.
Mhm. Mhm.
And as part of that process, we would look at the moon going forward or going back to see the timing for someone in their life. And so it made sense to me when I was doing the charts that I would follow the astrological way of doing it. And so if, as you know, human design looked back 88 days, it made sense from an astrological standpoint to look forward 88 days, because that is the manifestation process and shows the timing of events in a person's life. It happened when I did that, and I got 8 charts for Noble Sciences, plus then the integrated. The 8 charts were showing timing of what would be happening developmentally in a baby.
Mhm.
And indeed it does. So it's it's sort of fun for me to know that ancient astrology is scientific.
Mhm. 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 Oh, and a download all by itself, right? So, I'm still so and a couple things. One, you may have changed the labels in the software already because I'm not on the subscription. I just have the version prior. So there's that. But I think what would help me and others, again, coming from the human design world and having beaten into us personality design, red and black, conscious, unconscious, because you view it that way at all. So that the column on the right with the black imprinting, that's birth time, and then the other one, which is the 88 degrees or whatever that in design would be called the design. It's red. That's 3 months before. Could we give that time frame a specific label, even just for me to understand? Like it's just 3 months before. You definitely described many times why you even take the imprinting that you do, right? It's this, it's the bris for this, and it's when the colostrum.
Changes the milk.
There you go. You got it.
Um, the I did label them. Let me look.
Yes, maybe you have in the subscription. So, but it's more like what would you replace those labels with? Because I know when I've spoken to people with design, I've called it personal, I called it design. And yeah.
And let me pull up your chart, and if I can find it. Um,
And then I guess as part of that same conversation, the red and black, because I know that
yeah,
it's opposite
I
red and
see.
black with the flat, right?
It would be pretty easy to just do um, prenatal and birth and um, the prenatal and birth. Um, yeah, I mean, it's easy. I'll tell Charles to change the labels.
Okay, because that'd be useful. And then the thought process around that, or the understanding then, is it's 3 months before the soul hasn't been anchored yet, right? Because I think that was 2 weeks before.
Right.
So that
A
so
week, a week before.
yeah, because as I understood it, or was explained to me, and then I parroted, I was telling people the design was when your soul chose your meat suit for this lifetime. But it made sense to me. So that's how I said it.
Um,
Um,
the soul chooses prior to conception.
Really? Oh, really? Okay.
Oh, yeah. I mean, the baby is developing and chooses the parents. My grandson remembers choosing.
Okay, we need to talk about that then, because that I've heard that before and completely dismissed it in the past. But now you've got my attention. So go. What do you mean by that? Like,
When I don't, I mean, I haven't thought about it because we can't validate it.
right.
And so, what I do know from my own direct experience is that I was shown by God that the fear of death comes from that moment of the pause between life and death. And when we die, there's that instant, the transition when we have all knowledge and then we forget. So when someone is dying, and Osho talked about this, he said when he was young, a boy to a young man, he was fascinated with death. And he loved being with people who were dying because at the moment of death, there was this brilliance.
Hmm.
And I'm sure now when I think about what he was saying, he was experiencing that moment between life and death when a person is getting ready to enter into the light and the fear disappears. And so I know that at the moment of death, we have all knowledge, and then we forget when we incarnate, and that's the pain. So I can't tell you when a child chooses their parents,
Hmm.
even validate that they do. But once a child is conceived, there is a soul in that being.
Man. Okay. I'm not sure
And
what parts of that to unpack. They're all things that I've thought about, but that makes so much sense. Hmm. Okay,
I
sorry.
mean, you know, you are who you are from the moment of conception. And we can't say, well, you're just the shell of a human being and all of the DNA in you doesn't have any impact. I mean, you are in part the DNA of your parents and your grandparents
Right.
because the eggs and the sperm are grandparent, not parent.
Oh, right. Okay, yeah, yeah.
Rod talked about that.
Okay. Hmm.
Yeah.
That's interesting because, and even just when you say that, like I don't know what lectures of Ra to listen to because there was,
Probably none.
right? So
There's
okay.
so much bullshit in his lectures.
Yeah.
And so much, I mean, you read what I've published, the Human Design and Health book or the Triple Design Matrix, that's 6 lectures of Ra that I've commented on. And the Human Design and Health book is every other sentence is this doesn't hold, this doesn't hold, this doesn't hold. This is not true. This was just, you know, some of the type holds, centers hold, um, the meaning of hexagrams and astrology related to it hold. And much of what he delineated related to the tree of life makes sense. But circuitry, no, did not hold. Colors, tones, and bases is not possible to even validate.
And
They
that's because of the birth timing thing, right? We just don't
Well,
have
no,
accurate timing.
it's beyond that. It's that no statistic held together on those variables.
Hmm.
I mean, if you have, let's say you have a business, right?
Hmm.
And you're selling products. You're going to arrange the products by category,
Hmm.
things that hold together that make sense. When I did the factor analyses, which is, well, I did multivariate analysis of variant. I did correlations. I did t-tests and chi-square and z-tests and factor analyses and looked at which variables related to which other variables and every possible way that it could be sorted out, I used. So when I said to Ra, I'm not finding what you're saying, he said, look at colors, tones, and bases. So I went back into the statistics and looked at colors, tones, and bases. And there was no regularity to any of it. So it was random. One person could have, you know, what they were told was a color, and another person would be told they have the same color, and there was no relationship between the two. That made sense. And when I showed raw data, he had no interest in even looking at the output. The other day, I was looking for a document on my computer, and I found all of my raw data in my files. And I looked at some of it, and it's interesting, but there was one factor analysis that was very compelling, really compelling, and I could not figure out what it meant. And I wanted Ra to look at it, and he had no interest.
Hmm.
I said to him, Ra, I think there's something here in this output, but I don't know how to make sense out of it. So there is stuff in the body map that probably with more sophisticated methods could yield some interesting information.
Oh, I'm sure.
But with the way I'm reading it now, especially with what I know about the Tree of Life and having taught it, um, the readings I'm doing for people, they're just stunned at what I know and see.
Well, and actually, that dovetails nicely into what we've talked about. We would probably talk about, and then we got there, which is when a new baby arrives, it's a beautiful opportunity for parents or a mom that wants good recon on the kid's energy, right? So they're not pushing upstream all the time. And the way I used to sort of talk about, why design grabbed me was it was kind of like it was like going into a nursery and buying a plant. In the plant potter is that little plastic thing that basically says, this is a cactus. This doesn't like a lot of water, but it likes a lot of sun. Try not to fuck it up, right? Like that's to me, that's kind of what the
I
energy.
am getting into parenting more.
Mhm.
I did a reading this morning for a baby, 3-month-old baby, and um, very profound, very, very profound to give parenting advice. And I did a lecture, I guess it was last week, for the body graph people on parenting, using some of what I had written that they haven't put into the program yet on if your child has, let's say the child, and I used an example of channel 731, which is a channel of leadership. And of course, it's a channel of leadership. It's all Leo. So it's a strong fire energy. Now, I just read for a baby who has that channel. And what I said in the parenting is if your child has the 731, that child wants to be a leader. Don't tell that child what to do. Give the child choices and ask the child. Because if the child is going to learn how to lead, you don't want them to learn to be bossy. You don't want them to learn to ignore the input of the people they're leading. So become a role model, whether it's in your design as a parent or not. You do it for your child.
So, so Wendy and I both have the 731. So that's two children being told that. And like it's even interesting how we interact and how I notice people interact when the two of us are together, especially in business situations. Like I've noticed I've had to like step away from the dynamic at times because it'll be like two, moose locking horns and we think we're bantering and the other person's just like, oh, it's getting hot in here and we just think it's funny. So that channel's been a very interesting thing. So what would you say to, I know we're bouncing all over the place, but I'd I'd like Wendy to hear this. What would you say to a couple where they both have all this Leo?
Do you both have the 7 and the 31?
Yeah, and I'm not even sure where we get it in the four worlds. We both had it in the mental world, so that like I know that from a long time ago. So
Um, then you would take turns
mhm,
listening to your projection of what could happen and the plan that you would put forth for solving whatever problem you're solving.
mm,
And then you would ideally use an imago dialogue. Active listen is used more when there's needs. And clean language is used more when you want to go internal to someone. But if you're just in a mental world conversation and you want to know how would Wendy lead versus how would you lead, the only way would be to say to her, given this situation, how would you want it to play out? So no leading her in a given direction. So trying to make the question clean. I want to listen to how you would play this out, how you would manage this, and let the other person talk and just listen and feed it back in terms of mirroring. I hear you saying you would do X. So when you do X, then what happens? And what happens and who are you leading? Who's your audience? Who are the players?
mm,
And what are their characteristics? And then once you got all of that, she would switch and listen to you. So in organizational training, when you're coming up with a plan, you use what Tom Gordon called method 3 problem solving. You put all of the ideas on the table without evaluation. And then once everybody has put all of their ideas on the table, you begin to sort through, will this work? Will this work? Is this doable? Is this practical? Is this what we want? And if either of you would not like the other's plan, then you throw out the parts you don't like. And so ultimately you get to something that satisfies all the parties involved. in a way that feels empowering.
Mhm.
I used method 3 problem solving, bringing up my kids. It builds creativity. It builds tolerance. It builds open-mindedness. It builds spirituality. And it builds the capacity to let the other person express themselves without judgment. Is that helpful?
Yes, oh, definitely. And some of those things you mentioned before, so I realize I've been experiencing that real time and employing it even without realizing I was doing it. Because it's come with like sampling and experimenting in some of our interactions. And it's been a real, I think even just being away for a week was really good. I just needed some time to let my brain settle. Um, and just coming back, it was challenging for a couple days actually. But we've been getting along really, really well lately. And strategizing as a team. As you were talking, I realized, for a long time we had our roles. Like I was running the business and she was running the household, and that worked really well. And when I think about it, I think it was even from that leadership standpoint. Like I've got this one, you've got that one, and then it all smacked into this whole big mess with this other third party and the business and all this stuff, and it all crashed and burned right at the time that the kids were growing up, and they haven't left the nest, but they're adults and they have girlfriends and their lives. And we're basically all roommates in a house now, when it was felt more like a structured family with people taking the lead on stuff. But we seem to have got that dialed in again. It's almost like managing an
I
organization.
would recommend, even with grown children, that you talk to them on a spiritual level now and keep tabs on how you can guide without leading.
I think I know what you mean by that, but what do you mean by talk to them on a spiritual level? Can you give me an example?
Well, when you know what they're doing in their life, find out from them where it's touching them inside.
Mm.
I had an example recently of someone who was wishing for something. I want this to happen for myself. And I thought really deeply about it. And the word that was being used to project the manifestation was the wrong word. So, it would be like you saying, I want to play music instead of I want to play the drums in a in a in a performance. When you're manifesting, number one, it takes time. Manifestation process takes 3 months. In some people, many, many people, the spiritual requires a week to think about something before you make a decision. I would really recommend that no one settle on something of importance without taking a week, because it takes spirit a week to settle. But also in manifestation, we get to correct as we go. So the person I'm talking about was saying and using one term when really the goal on a spiritual level was a little bit different. And I corrected the language, and now we'll see what happens.
Okay, the question I want to ask, because we've been talking about astrology and taking a week, this the concept of sleeping on it. in my mind, I think, okay, 24 hours. So sleeping on a decision. Taking a week to think about it, or I know,
Well, it's the worlds. The mental world takes 3 months.
okay,
The spiritual world takes a week. The emotional world takes 2 days. And the physical world takes an hour and a half.
okay, that needs to be put on a data sheet. That right there, because that's the first time I've ever heard that. You need to say that again, please. Or please, would you say that again? Um,
Well, it's the chart.
and,
It's the
right,
way
and where is that coming from? Like, obviously,
it's coming from the developmental sequence postnatally and prenatally.
right. But the
Yeah.
time is coming from a planet or the moon, or right? There's the math of that too, right?
Um, well, the transits impact the worlds. So while the matrices may be mental world, spiritual world, emotional world, physical world over 2 time frames, prenatal and postnatal, the transits during those times are going to impact how those worlds play out for the person.
Hmm.
So, for example, when I said to Ra, I'm not a manifester. I wait and I wait and I wait. Why do I wait? I wait because I wait for my sacral center to get activated. But it got activated a week before I was born. So it's not like I have to wait for a transit to come in, but I have to wait to know what I know because my experience as a baby was prenatally, was giving me the capacity to know what I know. So I don't need to wait 2 days to know what I know, but I need to wait until I do know what I know. And that may take me time because the forces in the mental world may not have come together in a way that is a trigger for me to say, okay, now go. Now, I can use as an example my noble energy maps. I had my noble energy maps for 20 years before I was ready to make it public at the level of making it public now.
Mhm.
Why? Because it's God's time, not my time. And the collective wasn't ready. And they're barely ready now. But many people are ready now. Not so much the lay public, but what I'm experiencing is highly successful people get it.
Mm.
They know that their life has been fractionated, that something's missing. They're highly successful, but they're going for burnout because parts of themselves are not being attended to. So people are having health issues in the physical world. Some people feel lost spiritually, and the collective is lost spiritually. And then there are all these new age people who think they know what spirit is, but they're not living it.
Mhm.
So they aspire to something, but nobody has told them how to implement it in their daily life. My 5-day experience, Step Over the Threshold, is a good beginning step for people. And I've made it currently a self-paced program, which I will be releasing as a self-paced program for $97. And then they can, if once somebody goes through that program of the 4 worlds over 5 days, they can answer all the questions and do all the exercises, and I'm offering a 15 to 30-minute coaching session on the answers to their questions and how to integrate it into their life. It's the most important thing that any of us can do.
Mm.
Live balanced.
Yeah. Yeah, I need to go back and do that exercise again. Every time I do an exercise, I'm not all in. And so there was benefits from it, but yeah, I seem to improve with returning back. um, so many places to go.
The eclipse we just had,
Mhm.
a full moon eclipse, uh, was extremely intense. And because of the moon being in Scorpio, um, and being in, depending where you lived, it would have affected people differently. But the opposition between the moon and the sun um, made it especially important. And it also opened the door to rebalancing. So some of what's happened politically over the last week with the attempts to unify and find peaceful solutions was not a surprise based on that full moon. And you're experiencing it within yourself.
For sure. Yeah, we're talking if what you're saying, let me just back that up. I picked up from class or from maybe the webinar last week was that a lot of patterns are resurfacing. They have been over the last few months, and then all of a sudden it was like another pass of intensity. Yeah, and I experienced that in a huge way in the last 10 days. And almost, I was saying to Wendy last night, I feel like because I'm kind of paying attention more than others, I seem to be experiencing these energies like a few days ahead of others. Almost like because I suppose it comes and goes. It's not like such and such day's full moon. It's like it's a sweep. I,
Right.
I seem to be like surfing that wave early, and I seem to have a heads up, and then so I go through this shit show all by myself, feel misunderstood, and then I just watch everyone else, and all they're all beside me a couple days later having these emotional releases. Like even just talking to my dad yesterday, he was describing how he was not feeling well the last couple of days, but it wasn't related to the heart stuff. It was more just digestion and he started, I forget what he said, but it wasn't describing dreams, but there was just a lot of stuff that was clearly coming up for him. And there was emotion coming out of him that he wouldn't otherwise. And it was uncomfortable, right? It was like vibrating out of his body. So it was nice to see, and he was coming alive with it, but it was painful.
Have you looked at his chart multidimensionally?
Uh I don't I'd have to actually look. I stopped looking at family charts overall for a while. I haven't actually put him in the multidimensional, and I haven't looked at it because I didn't feel qualified to look anymore for a long time there. And so yeah, maybe it's time. I got to start looking at that stuff.
You can't get qualified unless you look.
Oh yeah, that's true. Yeah, no, I should look at. So what would I look at?
I don't know.
Oh, I see. Okay, just have a look.
Where is he open? Where is he defined? How does it connect to you? How can you use your skills from the design to inform him or be informed by him?
Yeah, I have not looked at the multidimensional. I have noticed lately that even just what I remembered about his mental world design, there were aspects that I felt myself. I don't want to use the word manipulate because it's not. It was empower or help, or I was guiding. And a lot of times it was just shutting up. Just like so much was just shutting up. Or not getting involved or trying to fix. So yeah, we've had a lot of really good
One of the things
chats.
that I said this morning uh, to the parents of the child who have the 731, the channel of leadership, is you need to always ask your child before you tell your child what you'd like him to do. Now, if that's a dynamic in any, a parent needs to shut up and listen, because otherwise the child shuts up and listens. And you don't get to have the child expressing who they really are. So looking at your parents' chart in that way might be really interesting. If you want, we could do that next week.
Sure.
If he gives permission.
I'd like to ask him. Yeah. I mean, yesterday while we were having all these conversations, I actually started talking about the energy in the air. And he just looked at me like I was crazy. And I just kept going. I was just like, well, the astrology this, and my friend Eleanor was saying that. And he's like, oh, I've read my horoscope. It's all, it's never aligned with what I thought. And I said, okay, well, a
Oh,
horoscope in a magazine is not astrology. Yeah. And as soon as I said that, all of a sudden, like that's what he needed to hear. But I even as I say this, I think that's what I thought, because that's what he taught me was right, because that was his values. And the one thing you
it
might
wasn't
remember,
his value. It was the mental world misinforming.
oh, for sure. But
And that's the 27th path of intelligence.
Mhm.
So when somebody is stuck at the 27th path of intelligence between the solar plexus and the splenic center, they cannot know the truth. And the mental world likes to be superficial and label and give a formula. All of human design is formulaic.
Mhm.
If this is defined, you're this. If this is defined, you're that. And even yesterday in class, somebody said they were a projector. How somebody in class could label that they're a projector, I don't know.
Well, because that's how it worked in human design.
Yeah,
So, and
it does not work that way in life, nor does it work that way in noble energy maps, nor does it work that way in the tree of life.
oh, correct. No, I'm agreeing with you. Like, just even based on the stats, if 99% of people are manifesting generators, what are we talking about? We are talking about
Exactly.
labeling the 1%, at which point we're just back to labeling. So, like, yeah. No, I'm totally there with you. And I'm finding more and more people reaching out to me on the sidelines, agreeing. So there's momentum. I gotta tell you about something later. Um, One thing you said earlier, and you said it a few times before, but today it was specific. It caught my attention again. So in the mental world, I was a single definition manifesting generator, and so I've said to a lot of people part of the reason I feel like I had no problem kind of just gravitating towards your work is that I was still a manifesting generator, right? I wasn't the label, it still matched. So then I was looking for the nuance, and then I realized there's a shit ton of nuance. So it was, um, but in composite, I'm a split definition manifesting generator. And you said something, you were describing someone this morning, and I've heard you say it before, but like it's the opposite now, right? Isn't it that most people in composite are a single definition manifesting generator? So I don't know if it's just my desire to be special or unique. Maybe it's the purple mohawk, but like I'm like, oh, okay, cool. I'm part of this 1%. So what does that mean? Or does that mean anything? And then the 4323 channel has been in transit up until like yesterday. And So, and I was like, oh, that's interesting. And so I was kind of like feeling into that. And it was right when I came back from Hornby and I was all clear. And I was like, I'd never had it just seemed like everything I said made sense all the time. Like it was just this big confidence boon. It was like I was always just wired up. And I feel like the transit helped, or maybe it was just thinking about knowing that it's in transit that gave me the confidence that I always had it. Um, and then and then also knowing that I can access that 4323. Like,
Guys, we all have everything.
right.
If you're human, you're in a four-world matrix and everything is activated.
Mhm.
What the transits do is it heightens your awareness of that energy, like a bold font on a Word document.
It's like a volume knob as far
Yeah,
as like an intensity, right? Like
right,
you
right. It's a
come
little
in,
bit,
come out. Yeah.
right. So nobody's broken if they're in a body.
Mhm.
And we can call on all of the energies anytime we want. We're not limited to what is defined in us. Um, how you manifest it, how you express it is unique to you. And you have choice. Ross said no choice. That's bullshit. At 3 months of age, it's very clear that a baby has choice. They reach for an object, they like people, they don't like people. Um, the reading I did on the baby recently, I said, your baby is a special indigo baby, very open. And I would guess, I said, that let's say you went to a restaurant. This baby had the 2145. Breathing would change before anything if that baby was stressed. And the parents acknowledged that there are times when they're out and the baby gets really restless and cranky. And all it takes is refining the energy. The parent can pick up and breathe, and the baby breathes in sync.
Mhm.
So we instinctively know how to take care of ourselves. The problem is most parents don't listen. They think they know what to do for their baby, or they're told what they should do for their baby.
Yeah, and as you say that, I see that pattern in a lot of places. I see it in people I know that have been in the Navy. It's it's my turn to lead now. These are the things I was shown. Here are the values that you're going to be given. Um, and it's just so apparent and clear to me now. Even just being on Hornby Island, like um, it was a blues camp, and there was performances at night, but during the day it was sort of like class, and so it was a bunch of us drummers, and it was such an amazing experience for a bunch of reasons. But the dynamic was that the drum instructor, he was in his late 70s and just a very successful career. He's just always been the guy. And just watching him perform, he didn't need to hit hard. He didn't dance in his throne like I watch a lot of drummers do, but like he was commanded. And it was just like observing this guy was just it was the whole thing. Um, but then
So think about what you're saying, Sean,
Mhm.
that so much of the learning you had came from observation of someone who was a master.
Mhm.
If we brought up children or related to people in our life with that kind of inner alignment and confidence, think how relationships would change.
Yep. Um, yeah, I won't go down the rest of the path, but mhm. I feel like I'm leading more and more just by showing up to things focused, relaxed. Like there's a dynamic that occurs, and I seem to be completely in control of it. Like I can basically decide if pickleball will be fun today or not for everybody, and I can sense it. But I don't know if it's just that I'm pushing through discomfort and I'm comfortable now. It's strange, but like there's a glow that happens if I'm in the zone.
Mhm. Absolutely. You just want to stay in the zone all the time.
Yeah. And so and it's happening more and more because of releasing old energies. Really is. Sometimes it's as simple as like realizing that um I'm getting email from some particular old service that has nothing to do with me and just unsubscribing from that newsletter. It's just like all these little energetic fuses that I
I
just have to
don't subscribe from a lot of things and they don't unsubscribe me.
Oh, I know. Yeah, and there's things that I've purposely chosen do not just like yeah. But yeah, it is those energetic. I've been clearing so many energy leaks, um, and really boiled down to being pretty lonely for a while there. So now I'm rebuilding connections, but from a place of uh, sovereignty. So that's been really good.
Good.
Um, well, how are you doing for time? Because you want to
I'm
and
good.
and energy. You want to keep going? Where could we go? Mm-mm. I'm not ready to ask you about dwads or super dwads yet, actually. Um, although, well, maybe, you know what? The astrology wheel. I Today, as I was walking towards this chat, I kept thinking about the middle of that wheel, like the center of sort of. I started looking at like creation. I started thinking of like if I'm in the middle there, these are the patterns that go around. I hadn't placed myself as the dot in the middle. And then when you were talking about dwads and super dwads and the fractionation that occurs from that center out, because it really is, right? There's the 12, and then it's split again and split again. Um, I, I think the only thing I want to say to that is my friend Elena said something a couple of years ago that kind of lines up with this, in that we're all part of the same crystal, and we're just a different edge pointing out, and then the light reflects off us and out it goes. Like so I am the light, or the crystal's here. It starts from here and goes out. And the more I explore that, the more it's like sonar, or it is the aura, it's how I interact with people. Like it really is that I am thing, that inner compass. Not sure entirely where I'm going with that, but that was the thought this morning. It was like I was like, I think that's what I need to look at and think about with the astrology wheel, is that my soul, or I am the middle of that
I
top.
think you should stop thinking so much.
I don't even sit down to think though. It's just happening. So that's the
I
challenge.
know, but don't engage with all of it
Mhm.
because it's clutter
Mhm.
and distraction and it's not relevant to your life.
So this is the question I still have. How do I do that? It happens, pickleball.
Sean, find what you love.
No, but it's happening while I'm doing what I love. If I'm drumming, if I'm playing pickleball, my focus sometimes is so there that I can outperform. And then it's gone like that because some thought has entered my mind and I'm processing either a business marketing
And
idea.
you tell, the thought, prior to sitting down, you say, any thoughts that are not relevant to me being in the zone can wait. You're sabotaging being in the zone.
Oh yeah. But I don't, it sneaks up on me. Like I'll be playing great and I'll be like, oh shit, I'm doing
That's why
it
I'm
again.
suggesting that you set your intention when you sit down to play.
Mm,
That you have to take charge
mm.
of putting the mental, emotional world in its place.
Thank you for that. Yeah, I think I've actually been experimenting with that and then just forgot that that was helping. So I just have these terrible habits. I
The mind is so fascinating.
yeah.
You know, we're very interesting creatures.
Mhm.
You know, all of this knowledge has recently come out about what's under the pyramids. Imagine personality being like that. There's so much under the surface, and it's mostly where we live. So keep it balanced.
Mhm. Yeah, the habits keep coming together to the point where I find myself amused by how I forget, and then the second time I just get a whack against the side of the head. And so yeah, I've pretty much blocked off time for self-care every day. I'm really clear about what I need. Um, and it's given me space to think about what actually I do need to think about.
You're meditating.
Yeah. Although it's funny, I go on like a run. I'll be like meditating like crazy for 10 days and then poof, just stop for 4 days and then one, oh, something's out of whack. And then I go back like it's, and I sometimes I think it comes from like when I meditate, sometimes it is incredible. Like I can't feel my hands and it's like it's blissy. And it almost seems to come down to a self-worth thing. Like it's, I'm not, I need to go back and be in the trenches, or I need to, I need to go suffer some more or something. So, ugh. Mm. Getting better though. Um, I feel like I asked a little bit about this last time, but I think we got sidetracked. I wasn't satisfied with the answer. Let's put it that way. So, in Tree of Life, you were talking about the 31st path and immortality. And, and we've talked about sort of death as well. And, you die, and for a second there you're like, ah, all knowing. And then, oh, here we go. Cycle starts again, right? And that's the fear. Um, Immortality is that certainly would never mean that the body could live forever, right?
I don't know.
The body. We don't know.
Maybe it could.
Yeah. Especially like if technologies get to the point where basically every body part can be simulated now. I mean, if you can get a new heart.
Well, I don't think that would be human. I think that we need to be in a real body to be human. Um, and I'm not a fan of any implants or
Mhm.
any of the technology implants that are being used to identify people who work places or have chips that give them knowledge. I think that is dangerous. However, I think that the medical field as we know it has created some illness that is unnecessary.
Mhm.
And that as the consciousness evolves, and I'm optimistic that it will. And I'm optimistic that some of the things that have happened will be turned around. I think people can live a lot longer and be healthy.
Mhm.
I said yesterday that Marvin and I are going to start doing a Reiki class once a month for a very minimal fee. Um, Mainly so that we can do group treatments, and anyone who has Reiki, especially second degree, can also participate in doing a treatment. And the energy of multiple people doing Reiki at the same time on people who may need healing, I think will be very profound,
Mhm.
especially if we follow the second degree Reiki manual and workbook, where I've gone through traumas and people can be healing trauma in their life.
Okay, I want to talk about that. I have still not done those exercises, but I kind of do Reiki on myself all the time, and probably in a roundabout way. If I went through the book, I've probably done 30% just doing my own experimentation. But I need to go back and do that.
No, you don't.
Well, I'd like to go back and see what I missed. How about that?
Yes, or if you feel like you can do it by tuning into what you think needs to be cleared, you can do it that way.
Well, that's what I mean. I think I can't remember exactly what it said, but it'd be like at this point in your life, apply Reiki to this developmental period. I kind of do that just by my process now, but there's probably ones in there I haven't thought of. So it makes sense to do that. Um, I had a question around that though. As a Reiki practitioner, if
Matt,
if
come.
if I was sitting with somebody and talking about their energy map, listening and asking questions and empowering someone, and I was to offer Reiki in that same situation, right? To offer an energy clearing on that, would I reference that that I guess the questions that you're asking in there are just creating the awareness that those are the kind of questions to ask and do a treatment on, right? It's not that's not like the Reiki treatment guide. It is
Right.
series of examples and then see where you go with that. Okay. Yeah, I need to go back and I would like to go back and revisit that. So cool.
How you speak to yourself
Mhm.
and the words you use, the self-talk, determines the outcome.
Yeah, I'm catching myself all the time, usually mid-sentence. Um, and then I slip once in a while and forget. And then around the cycle goes again. Okay. Oh, I have gate 13. It's my personality sun. It's without a doubt, it means that when I'm listening and I'm focused, there's a powerful gravitational pull. Um, and then I've got the 33, which is this sort of gate of storytelling. Uh, and it's funny, like in my interactions with my dad, we kind of used to wrestle about who got to speak next. And that's, with my awareness, that doesn't happen nearly as much. And so we've been bonding more. Um, Gate 13 is this sort of gate of secrets. People tell me things that they just come and tell me things. And it can be heavy at times. And then there is the idea that I have these secrets of others, and when is it appropriate to share them? And I've been very careful not to be a gossip. But there are times where like I know something that could truly help someone, and I don't always know whether I should share it. And I
Can't you
wrestle with
share
that.
in a way that is anonymous?
I've gotten pretty good at giving examples or creating distance, but sometimes the information is actually useful for both parties. For example, right? Like I know both sides of a story between people. I think I'm already answering my question, which is not acknowledge that, but steer them by asking them both questions. Let them come to it themselves. Yeah, I've been doing that for a while. Okay, I got that. I think I've got that one figured out. Okay, I'm gonna take that one off. I'm gonna give myself permission on that. I think I'm out of questions.
Okay. Should we stop?
I think we should. I'd love to just catch up offline for a couple minutes, and then we gotta go soon. So, all
Okay.
right, there we go. I'm gonna hit the button.
Let's make sure that everybody likes and subscribes. And if anybody wants to comment, please comment. And we can look and see if there are comments, and I will reply if anybody has questions. Does anybody have a question now?
The chat's quiet today, but
Okay.
but thankfully no bots either, because I'm usually navigating those, so that's good. All right, I'm gonna wrap.